We are really set on goals, and similar to trauma, it becomes a trigger word for us. And I want us to really diminish what that trigger is. What pathways can you create to overcome roadblocks? Take a moment at some point today and write those down. Document that. Don't just let this be another podcast episode that you listen to and you feel good, and then, you go on to your next thing. If you're doing that, you might as well be watching TV or doing anything else, because it's actually just fluff in the head. Welcome back, or welcome to the Conscious Investor Podcast, the show where we talk about health, mindset, and wealth building strategies. Today, we are diving deep into hope theory. This is Charles Snyder's work, and it is going to be epic for you, because guess what, Conscious Investor? I know we are 3 weeks deep into January, and you are feeling the weight of all of those ambitions, resolutions, and the enthusiasm of the new year is starting to already you're feeling it. Now, the Little Miss, Super Ed Steve and I, we just did a sugar challenge. Tomorrow is our last day of it. And that was only a 1 week long challenge. So I'm just saying, for those of you who have really big goals and expectations for 2025, this episode is just going to be one that you're going to want to bookmark, save it, download it, because you can reference back to it and just get yourself ready to go all over again. Before we dive into the episode, I do want to remind you that the Conscious Investor Growth Summit is only 6 weeks away. That is it. It is right around the corner. So you want to make sure that you pick up your tickets while you can. So we're limiting space to 150 attendees, as always. And that is because we really want everyone to be able to connect in a meaningful way. And that includes you connecting with the speakers. Earlier today, I had all of the speakers gather together. We were on Zoom because most of them don't know each other. And I have this super awesome network, and I just curate the speaker lineup in a similar way to people curating a TED Talk, and it's epic. And because they didn't know each other, and this is their first time meeting and just getting to know each other, I got a ton of text messages back saying, "Oh my gosh, this group is extraordinary." So if the speakers are saying that about each other privately to me, you can only imagine what you are going to be the recipient of as an attendee at the Growth Summit. Not only that, but we have laced in so many fun activities, because we don't want to just sit and be spoken at. And by the way, you're not just going to be sitting there and having people talk at you, because every speaker has been, given the mission of make this actionable. I want to see something that everybody can do almost immediately, like within 24 hours. What is the first step that they can take towards what it is that you are speaking on? So this is a level up opportunity you don't want to miss out on, Conscious Investor. And for those of you who've already picked up your tickets, thank you. It means the world to me. It excites me, and I'm so excited to break bread with you and hang out with you. You can pick up your tickets at theconsciousinvestorgrowthsummit.com. So just spell out the whole thing, consciousinvestorgrowthsummit.com. And you can pick your tickets up there while they are still available. Again, 6 weeks left. This is when everybody starts buying their tickets. And so you want to make sure that you pick yours up before they are gone. All right. I am really excited to dive into Dr. Charles Snyder's work on hope theory. This really came about. He hit the scene in like 1980, and he launched this hope theory concept in 1989, like right around there. And the reason this is important for you and I is because most of us, and previous to Snyder's work, really considered hope to be just an emotion. Oh, well, you have joy, or you have excitement and enthusiasm, you have hope. And so it's just this arbitrary thing out there, instead of being something that you can actually generate. And so with Snyder's work, he actually said, wow, this is more than emotion. This is something that mindset is a cognitive ability that we can use, and we can grow this. So as we talk about hope theory, I'm going to talk about it from a few different vantage points. I want to talk about it from Snyder's vantage point very specifically. I want to speak into wish fulfillment because it definitely coincides with Snyder's theory. And then I also want to extrapolate this further into the spiritual elements that are not covered by Snyder's theory. So let's dive on in. I've already given you a high level of what hope theory is, right? And so it's more than emotion, it is a cognitive ability that we can have. And this is really important to us. There are three cognitive elements to his hope theory. So he has goals, which I am just going to adopt and say wishes, because a lot of times we are really set on goals, and similar to trauma, it becomes a trigger word for us. And I want us to really diminish what that trigger is. So we are oftentimes forced to set specific, measurable, and actionable goals at our occupations, our workplaces, right? And so when we think of goals for our own life, we start to think in the sense of work, and it might become cumbersome, it might become a burden, and we just don't need it to be like that. If you recall, when Laura Weirs was on the podcast and she was, talking about different types of therapy, she specifically said she doesn't use the word trauma because trauma is a trigger word for so many of us. And so instead, she says negative life event. So as we were talking about this hope theory, Snyder, he says, hey, let's have goals, what we want to achieve. But I am going to reframe that, and I'm going to take a liberty here and say, let's reframe that, and so that we're not triggering ourselves. And I'm going to call it wishes. And you may have something, and I want to extend that permission to you to say, what feels suitable for you, right? Because we want something that is aspirational that we can step into and be excited about. So, hope theory, three elements. We have to have our wishes. We need to have pathways. And yes, our wishes and our goals, and whatever you want to call them, they do have to have an actual strategy bolstering behind them. And then the third element is we need to have agency. We have to have that internal motivation and an internal belief system that we are going to follow through and that we can actually get this done. Now, the reality is that while some people, not you, conscious investor, but other people in the world might believe that hope is superfluous and frivolous and just buckle down, hustle culture, let's grind it out and we'll get through it. And hope is just really minimized. And I want to encourage you that it really, truly matters. Those who have more hope in their life are more successful. There is a direct correlation, and Snyder's work and his research demonstrated that. So if we're looking at our education, if we're looking at our career, if we're looking at our health or our relationships, those of us who have more hope are going to be more successful. It also allows us, hope provides that resilience and adaptability that we need as we are navigating through a series of obstacles. We've spoken about the gauntlet of life many times over the last 5 years on the show. So, life has challenges and setbacks. On last week's episode, I was sharing with you how, the current challenge in my life isn't the first one, and there will be more. And there is this, can we adapt? Can we stay internally motivated, connected, so that we can navigate through and be successful? So there's actually a tool, and spoiler, I'm going to share a little bit more about this tool with you because it's called the future scale, and AKA the hope scale. I'm holding mine up. If you're over watching on YouTube, I filled this out. You can see it is a series of 12 very short, simple questions, and you're not actually scored on all of them. So he has 4 specific questions that show your pathway, meaning, do you have a strategy? And then he has 4 questions that he asks out of the 12 that are very specific. And those are on agency, like, how independent am I? How free am I in and of myself? And it's very, very fascinating. If I were listening to this podcast episode, I would want to know what the questions are. So I'm going to share the questions with you. And then we'll drop a link down in the show notes so that you can download this. I actually printed off 4 copies and I handed one to Super Rad Steve, Little Miss, my guy. I asked them to put their names at the top. It felt very school-like, and to fill them out. I haven't collected them yet. This is very recent. So I'm very interested to see how they score and how they rank. But you can do this for yourself right now. If you're driving in the car, we'll go through 4 questions and you can just kind of, I'll share with you how to tally those up, because you might be on the treadmill in the car, just not in a position to where you could really hold numbers in your head. So I'm going to give you the 4 questions, not all. I'll give you 2 sets of 4 questions. So the first question is, I can think of many ways to get out of a jam. So 1 would be mostly false and 8 would be definitely true. And then obviously the spectrum in between. I know you've filled out plenty of different questionnaires like this. So go ahead and rate yourself. 1 is low, 8 is high. 1 is definitely false, 8 is definitely true. The first question is, I can think of many ways to get out of a jam. Second question, there are lots of ways to get around any problem. The third question is, I can think of many ways to get things in life that are important to me. And the fourth question in this portion is, even when others get discouraged, I know I can find a way to solve the problem. So those questions right there, you're going to add those up. I know that might be tricky, but again, we're going to drop a link in the show notes so you can go back and print this off and take it and evaluate it on your own. So if you were scoring those, you would take those numbers and there are 32 points total possible. Remember back in college, always calculating your grades. Those questions have to do with agency. And the next 4 questions are on your strategy, your pathway. So these 4 questions are: 1, I energetically pursue my goals. 2, my past experiences have prepared me well for my future. 3, I've been pretty successful in life. And 4, I meet the goals I set for myself. So again, you would just add up your scores and you would say, that number out of 32, you could figure out the percentage if you want. Those tell you your agency, your pathway, and together, when you add those up, it gives you your overall hope score. I'm pretty excited. I'm proud of it. I'm very excited. My pathway was actually 100%. And those questions, on pathway have to do with, I can think of many ways to get out of a jam. The first set of questions, that was on pathway. I had 100% on that. So over my lifetime, I can see I've always had to adapt. I've had to be resilient. I've had to be very creative with lots of solutions. And you probably have been too. I mean, you're a really successful conscious investor. So all of those things add up. This is an interesting way to look at ourselves. So I know I had 100%. I'm not saying, oh, look at me. I'm saying that's really interesting. I have focused on that mindset and cultivating that mindset. But I also had maybe a head start because the environment that I grew up in very much influenced that adaptability and encouraged that level of adaptability. And my parents modeled that adaptability, and then life required adaptability. And so I've grown over the years in that very specific way. And so that is why it's showing. If you are scoring low in there, don't beat yourself up, conscious investor. Don't be like, oh, I can't believe it. I'm 56 and this is, I should have more to show for this. No, remember, this is feedback. This gives you a direct line to say, wow, this is great. I can see that with the next challenge that comes my way, I'm really going to allow myself to sit back and be more creative with my process. I'm going to relax myself so that I can see 5 different ways that I can resolve the situation that I am in. Now, when it comes to agency, quite frankly, I was not 100%. I was a 30 out of 32, which is a 93%. But there were a couple areas where instead of giving myself an 8, I was like, actually, that's a 7. And that's just the reality of it. So, what I want you to consider with this also is that I know, conscious investor, you might not want to give yourself that 8 definitely true or that 1 definitely false. You might not be inclined to do that. I want you to go back. If that's you, please go back and listen to the podcast episode from late November, early December on how to be a 10, because you more than likely are just being super rough and hard, rough on yourself. And so I want to just encourage you to shift that perspective a little bit. So overall, on my future scale or my hope scale, I'm a 62 out of 64. So I'm feeling pretty fly about that. That seems pretty awesome. But I can also see areas where I can improve, which is also exciting because I don't want to become stagnant. So tools and resources like this can be really good resources for us to see ourselves, because it requires us to step out of ourselves and to be more objective and to see ourselves in the way that maybe the people around us see and view us. And that's really important, because as highly motivated individuals, we're constantly pushing the barriers. And so when we can see something like this, it's a little more tangible. It allows us to, again, say, oh, yeah, I'm doing a pretty good job, right? While we're talking about that concept, I just want to give you another resource that you can use, another tool, and that is Brendan Burchard. He has a free download, high performance habits that will score you. I don't know if I'm going to get all the categories correct, but it scores you on your clarity, your energy, your necessity, and 2 other areas. What you can do with tools like these is that you can go back to those. You could take them on a quarterly basis, and it can give you some type of baseline to say, okay, maybe I'm stalling out in this area because my level of necessity is low, or maybe I need to raise my level of clarity on what I'm pursuing and trying to generate in life. So these type of tools for highly motivated people like us, conscious investor, are really, really invaluable, because we can get in our head. So that was a lot of bonus on the whole hope theory. But I want to encourage you to take the hope scale, or as they refer to it also as the future scale, again, linked in the show notes below. But let's talk about, this is all cool. That's great. Quizzes. But Julie, come on, how does this affect my life? Like, where is this going to be? So let's think about real life application of hope theory. And I can think of so we want to break this apart. We want to say, okay, let's talk about our pathway, our strategy on how to accomplish and achieve something. In the wish fulfillment framework, we actually go through this and we actually break down and distill down all the steps in an individual way. But what we also want to do is we want to make sure that we are connecting the feelings into all of these things. Remember, we've spoken a lot about success without satisfaction, and the way we can really arrive in that swim in the sea of success is when our feelings are connected directly to what we are trying to generate. So if you are experiencing success without satisfaction, then it's a cue to say, I need to go back and say, what are the feelings I'm trying to generate from this? It wasn't just about the outcome, about arriving at the destination. It is also about the process and who I'm becoming and what I want to feel along the way and what I want to feel at the end. Little Miss, she is a great example of this because she has set some very clear goals for herself. Now, I am going to put an asterisk here. She wanted to get herself 6-pack abs. Okay. And I know she's a young lady, and most people, let's be real, we all want 6-pack. I bet you want six pack abs also. There aren't any body shaming issues. Like, we're not pushing her. It's just a goal of hers. And that's pretty cool. But she created a pathway to do that. She created a strategy. She found different workouts on YouTube that she could do. And she found the time of day to do it that worked for her, followed by she was disciplined. She executed on that. So her execution is top notch. So when we have that clarity of what is the outcome I'm looking for, and I asked her when she was discussing this, how do you want to feel? Like, we connected in those feelings, and she wanted to feel proud of herself. And that for her, she thought that would be fun, and she would be proud of herself, and she wanted that feeling of confidence. She believed that having that six pack would help her feel more confident. And so she went into it very clear minded. Again, there is no body shaming, and I have not forced my kids to do anything. This is just her internal motivation taking place, which is also phenomenal. So, knowing what you want, knowing when you're going to do it, knowing what you're going to do, knowing how you're going to do it, and then delivering on that in a disciplined way. That is someone, and that someone can be any of us who choose to do that. So I want you to just think right now about a goal that you have struggled to achieve, and maybe it seems just completely out of reach, right? And so let's reframe that and say, what's a wish? A wish is something that seems unattainable. Well, it's not unattainable. It's that we haven't broken down the pathways, and we can do that. So what pathways can you create to overcome roadblocks? Take a moment at some point today and write those down. Document that. Don't just let this be another podcast episode that you listen to and you feel good, and then, you go on to your next thing. If you're doing that, you might as well be watching TV or doing anything else, because it's just fluff in the head. So we actually want to put action behind this. Now, how do we build hope in our own lives? Here are some very clear actionable steps, okay? And let's take 3 clear steps based on Snyder's hope theory. Here's what we can do. 1, let's get clear on the wish, the goal, or whatever you want to call it, okay? So we need to be specific. What is it that I really want to achieve in this situation? And then we also want to connect our feelings with that, so that it's all combined. There is clarity in the outcome and clarity in the feeling that we are trying to generate. Once we have our clarity there, we can say, what are the pathways that we are going to do to arrive there? Don't just take one strategy, because just as well as I do, conscious investor, that life happens and we're going to have curveballs thrown our way. And so brainstorm a few different ideas and then choose your favorite idea to start with, but be flexible along the way, because guaranteed you're going to have an obstacle 2 or 3 that are going to come your way. And then finally, we want to strengthen our agency. So one way we can do that is through something that I call resilience mapping. I have a podcast episode already on that, so it's searchable. And resilience mapping is just such a great way for you to bolster up your agency, because you are taking your past experiences in life, you are drawing upon those experiences and creating a body of evidence as to who you are and who you are showing up to be in the world. This is going to totally catapult your self-belief, and that's going to strengthen your ability to succeed. So with all of this is all great. I love this. I love productivity. I think you do too. And I love success. And all of this feels really great. And we have done the great job of incorporating our feelings into this. And so we know we're not going to arrive at the end being successful but dissatisfied. But there's another component here that I wanted to touch on. And I mentioned that at the beginning, and that is a spiritual component. So all of these things have a whole other dimension. And when I think of hope, of course, you've been listening for a while, Conscious Investor, I always think about my faith. And I think about how much my faith in God has provided strength and resilience in my life. And when I feel backed against the wall, or I feel that I can't see the path clearly, I don't know how to navigate around this, what do I do? What do I go to? Well, even before that, I do this, but along the way, there are times where that vertical alignment and just being connected spiritually to God is the path forward. And so I want you to consider that as also something to incorporate into your hope theory. Oh, I love Jesus. I know that there are lots of other beliefs out there, but if you don't have a sure-footed belief that is working for you, I would highly recommend pick up a Bible. Just peruse through, get to know God on your own, because there's a lot of things that are said about God that you're like, huh, when you actually read things, you're like, oh, that in context makes a little more sense. And so I always like to read things for myself, including things like Snyder's hope theory, or I'm reading another book right now on the nervous system. And that one I cannot wait to get into with you, Conscious Investor, because that's going to add a whole other dimension to all of this. But I have to finish my own research first.